Mary Kay! Woo! I'm so excited. Mary Kay and I met officially at the Oaks. I was taking a retreat there because, as someone who leads retreats all the time, I also like to be a student and have beginner's mind. And I was so lucky, and in Hebrew we would say zoched. I merited to be one of her students in her equine therapy class, and it was incredible. And it was mind-blowing to watch everyone have this like out of body experience and just watching her interact with the horse. And so for a while now, a couple of years actually, I've been like, "Can I have you on the podcast?" So, and she finally said yes, I'm free because she's always flying all over the world to ride and be with horses and teach people about how incredible they are. And so I'm just so happy to have you here. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, I'm thrilled. Just so thrilled. And I think you and I share the quality of being lifelong students and curious and wanting to always grow into our potential. So part of the reason I love to do the work that I do is that the horses teach me, nature teaches me, and people like you keep teaching me, even how we started today's conversation. So
Yeah.
thank you for welcoming me into your community. I'm so honored to be here.
So, yes, it is a very healing podcast, and you are such a healer. And to be in your presence, I'm like actually hoping and wondering that people who are listening right now would take the time to go and find you. And we'll talk about how to get in touch with you at the very end of the conversation. But I want everyone to experience what it's like to be at the Oaks with you because the Boyces who run it, Stephanie and her husband, and the way you are, your presence, it's such a warm, nurturing presence. And I remember that feeling, that visceral feeling. And sometimes people come into the room to be heard, and some people come into the room to be seen. And I felt like when you were teaching us, you were just there to reflect. You had no business of being like, my name's Mary Kay. Like you were the opposite of the Deborah Wise Prada. And those are my favorite kind of teachers. And I hold on to them and I keep them in my pocket. And I'm doing 50 characters of my life right now on my Instagram. And because I teach narrative therapy and it's like so fun to get to send the videos of these impressions to my sixth grade teacher, my
Oh,
dance teacher, my voice teacher, who unfortunately is in heaven, but my drama teacher, and it's making their day, even though I'm, doing their idiosyncrasies, and all of them have one thing in common. They just wanted to be there for me.
yeah, I love
And so
that.
you do that. So without further ado, let's jump right in. I always ask my guests three questions, and they all basically start with the letter F. And so instead of starting with with freedom today, I thought we would start with failure because that was actually one of the things we talked about at the Oaks in the retreat. Like, how do you deal with getting it wrong, with
Mm.
doing something that wasn't good for you or someone else? And so, can we start with that? Can we start with
Yeah, no,
failure? Okay.
I love that, and just the generous things that you said about me would not have been true they would have been true in my heart, but not in how people experienced me before my failure. And my failure I'd like to talk about wasn't just one failure, but it was a series of failures. And I do think by whatever word you want to use to describe the intelligence of life. For some people, it's God. For other people, it's divinity, whatever word that is. For some people, it's nature. I grew up with a lot of nature and a lot of faith in my family. But anyways, whatever you would describe that intelligence, it gives us increasing alarms. C.S. Lewis said it. Um, God or the divine intelligence whispers to us in our dreams, speaks to us in our conscious, and screams at us in our pain. It's the gong to a world that doesn't listen, right? I think about my failures. So I'm not going to give you the long life 60 years story, but the failures started at the time that I let go of my true nature, which is quirky and generous, and um, I let go of that to try to fit into a world that was foreign to me. I was a kid who grew up without TV, without the right clothes, so I couldn't be cool. And I wanted so desperately to fit in that I started doing all the things. And the failure to, I wanted to be a teacher. And instead of being a teacher, I became a businesswoman. And then by God, I was going to be the best businesswoman that I could be. And I started sacrificing kindness for promotions. And at first, the outer trappings made up for the inner numbness that I felt. Um, but what happened was I kept having failures, what I would call failures of the human spirit, failures of my heart, in order to do things that I thought would have me fit in, be liked, be successful, be well seen, so that people would want to be around me. And I think it continued to build. I became less and less myself. And the failure that I wanted to share today with you and your community is the failure that I regret the most. It's also the failure that has given me the most lessons in my life. So I was at an age where all my friends were married, they were all getting married. So the first failure I made in this relationship was I married the person who was in front of me. And he was handsome and charming and seemed like all the right things, but there was a part of me in my heart that knew we were not necessarily a good fit. I married him anyways. Failure that goes along with that, I did not have good tools for how to handle difficult things. And this was a person, that a man that, if he were alive today, he would probably be diagnosed with the head injury from playing too much football, the concussion injury. And but he had a lot of over time the charisma faded, and he had a lot of paranoia, he had a lot of pain, and he was self-medicating to address that horrid pain. And I had the failure of being scared and being angry, and not of being compassionate or knowing how to show up in a way that was a true partner to somebody who was in a lot of pain. In my lack of being able to be present as a true partner, which is like ironic when you think about like what you described me as today. I didn't have the capability to be those things with him. And he continued to make choices that were unhealthy and unhelpful. And some of the choices he made, which I don't have to go into the drama of, were choices that in our culture would give me the right to shame him, right? Choices that I would be like, oh, you should just leave him. Oh, he's such a bad husband. Um, and I feel really grateful because at the time that some of those choices were being made, I ended up through the serendipity of relationships that come into your life in funny ways. I ended up in front of a horse. And I was not an equestrian. The only horses I had as a kid were little toy wooden ones. And so I ended up out in a prairie in Colorado with an amazing teacher teaching us what horses could show us about actually being human. And so I'm going to have a story within a story. Standing there on a hot July day, sweating. I'm like, what on earth am I doing here? I should be, at work. I should be doing other things. I should be at the beach, right? And the teacher walked in, kind of like a horse herself, slow, stands in the middle of a small circle of women and says, horses never lie. Humans, we lie a lot, most disastrously to ourselves. And I spent the next 4 days in the compassionate presence of these animals, facing some of the lies I was telling myself, lies I was telling other people, and not on purpose. Like I didn't think of myself as a liar. And I went back from that time and said to my then husband, um, there are a lot of things that we both have failed in this relationship. And I failed it from the very beginning by telling myself the lie that I needed a husband. And what I'd like is for us to start telling the truth. and I don't care about these other relationships. I don't care about any of the choices that you're making. I care about them. But what I need is for us to just tell the truth. Like we can sort everything else out if we just start telling the truth. And I think at that time, at first he didn't believe me. And then after several additional lies, I said, look, this is the boundary. If there's no truth, there's no relationship. And I did ultimately end up leaving that relationship because the lies didn't stop. One of the great lessons, in addition to telling the truth from that story, was that after spending time with the horses and just really starting to move back towards my true nature, one of the things that I did in that ending was really commit to absolute generosity. What was the most generous choices I could make in every step of that way, whether they were financial generosity, friendship generosity, just any way I could do that. And in the end, I thought it was me trying to make up for the lies that I had told and for the lack of partnership I had exhibited. To me, it felt like a trying to, in some small way, make right for my failures. What I didn't realize in the end is that I would actually learn that I was a much stronger and better person than I had believed myself to be, that I could be generous even under really difficult circumstances. So that's a lot of failure.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. I called off an engagement to a wonderful guy. He just was not the right person for me. And I just took this forgiveness workshop. I mean, I teach them. My whole podcast is about forgiveness, the big F word that nobody talks about. Um, and I just practiced something 2 days ago where I did this thing, and I've done it before, but it was really powerful. Instead of forgiving him for anything that, I felt in the moment, that it like made it right for me, even though he really didn't do anything wrong to me, if honestly, I forgave myself for lying to myself that, even when we first started dating, I was like, well, he's not exactly what I'm looking for, but I'll make it work because I'm turning 38 and I have to get married by a certain time and I have to have children by a certain time. Like I already was so late, right? Late, whatever that means. And I can so relate. And for years, people have come up to me and been like, that was so brave and he's such a good guy. And I would hear stories from all the people that didn't have the quote unquote courage in their moment to leave, and they're still married, some of them. And you hear it's so disrupting for people when you break off a marriage or an engagement. To me, they're very similar. They're not the same, but they're very similar. And I couldn't forgive myself for a year and a half when I first called it off, because I was like, you ruined his life. Like you disrupted his whole family. Like there were gifts bought and there were invitations that were going out, and how could you, and like all that shame around it, right, and the guilt. And I'm here to say along with you that no matter when you start telling the truth to yourself, it's always a good day. It's always a good day to emulate the horse behind you.
You're like so beautiful. Oh,
I adopted him from my sister. She had four Persian cats.
oh,
So he's probably a little upset with me because I just woke him up. And I'm sorry. I just wanted wanted everyone to see you. He's my new
oh,
son.
oh.
He is the cutest little baby.
I
He's
love
so
him.
kind. He absorbs so much. And whenever I'm having a hard moment, I just go to him, and he really is a support for me. They don't have a mean bone in their body. They don't have free will. They just literally are on God's payroll. And
Mhm.
so they don't have the need to prove themselves or feel guilt or shame or I should have done it this way. Like they don't, my rabbi always says, you never see a lion going after a gazelle and say, maybe I should let her live. Like they just don't do that, right? They're just like God's like go, and they go. Love this idea of the wonder of telling the truth. You stepped into that. You're such a wondrous person. You have so much wonder about you. And so I wonder if maybe that's the title of this episode. It's like there's so much around in a good way about telling the truth. In American society, we have this idea that like I can't say I'm X, Y, or Z. even though I am, and everyone knows that I am, and everyone also is. But that's because, oh, there's so much shame around, right? If I
Mm,
actually said what I thought, how many friends would I lose? You know, in my show, Cosmic Conversations, which is up here, is all about having that kind of conversation and gently walking into the truth, not just, and I don't think you went to your former husband and said, like, tell me the truth. You were like, let's start to tell the truth. Let's see the goods, the upshot of that. Because you can't lose, right? But there
no.
is this idea in Judaism, which is you have to keep shalom bayit. You have to keep the peace of the home. And sometimes that does require a white lie. If the
Mm.
wife comes home from giving a baby and she's like, I look like crap, that's not for the husband to be like, yeah, you do. You should start going to the gym. Like, no, honey, you're beautiful. You just gave us this beautiful child, right? So I didn't mean to cut you off for such a long time, but I think there's something so kind in telling the truth, but you really have to be a match for it.
You do, and it's something we each get to. I'm still growing into it, every day of my life. And I think about it from a couple lenses. What I think I learned from the horses was as gentle as possible and as firm as necessary, which is the way they tell the truth to each other. How gentle can I be? And if it doesn't break through the awareness, can I slowly up the intensity of the ask until I get the attention of my partner to break through? And can I always do it with the conversation of, I believe in me enough that I'm speaking this truth, and I believe you in enough in you that the truth is better for both of us, even if my truth ends up being an unhealthy perspective from an old pattern or a way of programming I got from my society. Having it on the table for us both to look at actually creates an invitation for us both to grow and heal. And so I think you're right that that invitation to truth um, was meant as that, an invitation to something better than what we have today. And I think the horses taught me about the places where I had a bite in my truth, versus a nudge or an invitation. And the other thing it reminds me of, Barbara, which I love, is an old book by Randy Pausch that was called The Last Lecture. A lot of people loved and remember that book. And in the book, a reporter asks him, if you had 3 words to give your children, he was a man who was dying young of pancreatic cancer, what words would you give to them? And I think a lot of people thought he'd say, I love you. And he said, if you gave me 3 words, I would tell my children, tell the truth. And if you gave me 3 more, I would say all the time. And it's just, right? It's just this idea that, wow, it's, everything in nature, not just the horses. You don't cut open an oak tree and find a lemon on the inside. Like, it's all telling the truth. Our true nature is to be congruent. And the more congruent we are on the inside and the outside, actually, the more safe we are to people. In any place I'm not congruent, I now look first to myself to say, what do I need to heal in here so that I can be that on the outside? And I think, Barbara, your kind words at the beginning are 25 years of practice. It's like every day, continuing to try to grow into and seeing the places that are a barrier to that truth and the capacity to do it in a loving way. So I love what you're saying so much. I think it's really powerful.
I just want to go over, you said it so quickly and it was like a shoot of lightning. You said as gentle as possible. And what's the end of the sentence?
Firm as necessary.
Firm as necessary, like the oak tree, like the oaks.
Like the oaks and like the horses. So in the horses model of leadership, it's dynamic, it's cooperative, and the horse that becomes often in the feminine, but the lead mare and the stallion have different roles in a wild herd. But the lead mare who keeps peace and unity and pace and direction. So you say, we're going this direction. Me and my former husband, we're going towards truth and a commitment to kindness to each other. So she sets that, and the horse that becomes the lead in the herd isn't the horse that has, the fastest or the strongest or the most beautiful or the most charismatic. It's the one that is the least likely to lose their sense of self under the pressure of a difficult moment. And so you think about that model of leadership, and she does it by having what we would label a predictable escalation of pressure. So she starts an ask of the herd with just maybe a small movement of a muscle, a twitch of an ear that's as gentle as possible. She only goes to maybe, moving her body or showing her teeth if the ask at the ear doesn't work. So she's saving energy, but she's also being trustworthy to people that they know, or to her herd mates, that I will never bare my teeth or kick without you knowing it's coming because I'm predictable in the way I escalate, which is such a beautiful way for us to express our needs to people. Because my husband, it takes a lot more to break through his energy field than mine. And so he can be across the house and say like a under his voice, and like my whole nervous system feels it, right? But sometimes if I want to ask him something and he's watching a sporting event, it takes more energy to break through his awareness. So my firmness as necessary might be a little more, but can I do that without any bite in it, without some complaint or criticism, just with pure ask of what I desire? So yeah, it's such a great lesson.
Oh my gosh, wow. It's like truth bombs going off all the time. Um, so the truth is better at all times, as gentle as possible and firm as necessary. And then you said, what do I need to heal in here so I can be that on the outside? So I can
Mhm.
reveal it. And then the lead mare, let me make sure I got this right. I'm predictable in the way, oh, sorry, the lead mare keeps unity, peace, and direction. Was there something else?
So she keeps a pace. So we
Peace.
can only move at a pace that keeps the unity and the safety in the direction we're going. And she trusts the sacred pace of what's needed, that keeping safety, so that sort of, if we think about psychological safety, that you belong here, you belong in the herd, matters more than pace. Um,
Wow.
and it's only under the most dire moments at which pace at all costs, but 99% of the time, right? So she keeps direction. We're headed here. This is our vision. This is our true
Okay.
north. And then safety and unity, and then pace. Yeah.
So unity is more important than how fast you get there.
Yes. Except for like maybe like 1/10 of 1%, at which time you don't have to think about it because your body's already moving.
It's so
The
funny.
house is on fire or something.
So in Judaism, sorry, I always wind up
Yeah, I
like
love
not
this.
necessarily a Jewish podcast, even though like I'm so Jewish and I learn Torah like 3 to 4 days a week and then sometimes twice in one day. It's just my vitamins. But one thing that I love about Jewish practice when it comes to names is that whatever you're named, when you call someone that, it brings the essence. It's like a blessing. It brings, so if I say Mary Kay versus Mary, Mary's going to bring out something different, right? Especially around the holidays. Mary Kay, some people are going to think makeup because I used to subscribe to, I had a vendor that lived near me and I remember she would sell me the little tubes of lipstick and stuff. But because it has a C and it's together, I always think of you since I met you. And it brings like a warmth to my heart, that nurturing energy, right? I have a friend. She's my best friend in the whole world. Her name is Marion and I'm gonna start crying, but um, she brought me closer to God because she introduced me to my rabbi. I'm sorry.
Please let her be here with us in the beauty of that.
And her husband calls her Mare, and he calls her that all the time, like 20 times an hour. Mare, get in here. Mare, look at this. Look at this cute meme, Mare. And so sometimes he calls her Mare Bear. And I've known them since 2001. So because I've known them for such a long time and I've like been in and out of their house so many times watching their kids, like babysitting, a lot, um, family events, like I just visited her parents. I started calling her Mare Bear too, not realizing that it was like their special name. So sometimes I just call her Mare. And then a few years ago, I started sending her a little emoji with like a horse and a bear.
Mm.
And now I know why, because their road hasn't been easy, as artists and she was a producer for Disney and they worked so hard to build this beautiful family, and they are such pillars of the community that we all lived in for 20 something years, and they're still there, and I moved out. But I know that she is the backbone, because in Hebrew we say the woman is the bone of the house and the man is the sand around it, which is like, well, what does that mean? It's like a whole conversation. But she keeps the unity, the peace, the pace, the sacred pace, and the safety and the direction, commitment to kindness. And here's the part that I love that you said, least likely to lose her sense of self under extreme pressure. And I've been there when she's in the kitchen making her 1000th meal for Shabbat and having 20 people over, even though she had nothing in the oven, Thursday night at midnight, and how she puts it all together and sets the table so beautifully. And there's not one crumb. And because like her husband's like, it has to look good. And he's, a wonderful, wonderful guy. He does other things for the meal to elevate the table. And, he's incredible. He's a world-renowned speaker. But, and not but, it's like, I've seen her when like a kid comes in and they're dropping their backpack off and they accidentally step on her toe and she's like, "Hey!" But she doesn't crumble and she doesn't ask for anything. She's just like, "Watch where you're going," you know? And there are moms that would take something away or you lash out, or how could you do that, And she lets it out and then keeps going. And some people, like my super feminist friends might say, I can't believe these Orthodox Jewish women, they're stuck in the kitchen all day and and that's not her either. She's out and about, she's running around. And yet, I think she would say her greatest pleasure is hosting those meals and having 20 guests when who knows how they can afford the time, the money, the energy, all the things that somehow it's always magically there come hell or high water. And I watch her lead the charge of the family and sit at the head of the table, and her husband's at the other head. And it's so clear to me now, just like hearing the definition of her name. Because it doesn't matter whether it's Hebrew letters or not. My rabbi always says the sound of the words creates the blessing. So, in Hebrew, it's Miriam, which is so close to Mary, right? Miriam, right? And Miriam, we know, was Moses' sister, and she brought the water for the entire Hebrew people that later became the Jews, and some of them became Christians, like yourself. And, you know, I get that because of that lady, because of those words. So, thank you.
Okay, may I add a couple more beautiful things to
Please.
Mare? I won't
Yes.
call her Mare Bear because I don't know her yet. Uh,
Ah! She's gonna love you.
uh, I already love her. So I'm going to say a couple things, which is she's also modeling a beautiful quality of the horses in that when horses feel an energy that doesn't feel good to them, what they do is they move that energy through their body. So I love that if the backpack hits her toe, she's like, "Ooh," which is so horse-like. Like I'm going to get the energy out and then I'm going to return to presence and be like, "Oh, watch where you're going," or "How was your day?" Whatever. So
Yes.
I love that, like even that moving of energy is what sometimes needed to return us back to presence as opposed to stuffing it or biting it out to someone. And so I love that. And then this is the thing I really want to share with you and with Mara and with anyone who is aspiring to being a lead mayor of their own lives is the idea that from the beginning of time, humans have looked to horses to carry us in places we could not go. So early humans often considered them a bridge between heaven and earth. They were free and strong and beautiful, but they kept lowering their heads to us in service. So a horse could run away from a human, but instead they bring their heads down and say, "Let me help you." And they helped us climb mountains we couldn't climb. They helped us plow fields we couldn't plow. They helped us fight wars we thought we had to fight. And now I think they're bowing their heads just to say, "Let us help you remember what cooperation, what partnership, what healing and kindness look like. And so, what I hear in your friend is she is the human embodiment of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's this idea that right now there's just so much pressure on the Jewish people.
Mm.
Like we're feeling it. And so many people are like, why are you complaining about anti-Semitism? You're just like the X, Y, and Z groups that say you're being racist or you're being anti whatever, right? It's really not. It's like if you have ever studied the Jewish people, the Christian people, like anyone that went out for God, there are Christians being massacred in Africa right now for the same reasons. And those of us who know what the heck is going on are terrified. But our rabbis and our pastors are telling us, do not be afraid. It is a scary world. Rabbi Nachman of Breslov says it is a scary, scary, complicated, dark world. There are people being hung in the streets in Iran right now for being gay, for not covering their hair if they're a woman. It's happening today. People know it. They're seeing it on their phones when the internet is allowed to be shown. But the key is not to be afraid. It's understandable to be afraid, but we have to trust that God has got us. And I think what you're talking about is so healing because all of my rabbis and the Rebbitzins that I take class with, they're like, Mashiach, like the Messiah, is actually, they're saying he, she, it is here, right? It's this presence of God wants to save the world, literally save us from destruction and darkness and whatever. And there's going to be a small and mighty group to do it. I personally believe it's going to be righteous Jews and Gentiles that are going to do it. However, we're like in a rush because we're like, I can't take another suffering, of course. And yet we have to unify, and it actually doesn't matter, and it's none of our business how long it takes. And that's what I think you're reminding me today on this special moment. It's like, don't be in such a rush to do it. Like, do it, but don't feel that pressure because yes, there's negativity and darkness, and yet it's really none of our business how long it takes. We just have to get everyone on the bus. We got to get everybody unified. So thank you for that reminder.
Yeah, I so appreciate getting to have this conversation with you. And I for me have found, nature such as, as the first creation in the world we live in, it does carry the template of God, the template of divine intelligence, and it reminds us of the things we like when I feel lost, I look at the tree, the oak that's so rooted. I love the sequoias too, and I love how, they're thriving by their roots being intertwined with each other. So it's like, who am I twining my roots with that keeps me strong when the storms come? I think about, I can go to the sequoias and see the burn marks of a fire, and that they know that they grow the fastest in 100 years after that fire. So it's like, where's the fire? And I think about that, my failure story I started with. I grew the most in the 10 years after that. It was such an accelerating fire. And so, not that that makes the things that are happening okay, but it does take me back to what's the small thing I can do today? Where's the relationship that's right in front of me or within me that needs to heal so that I can show up with ever greater love, trusting that that's just like the tree's doing its part is the greater plan. How am I doing my part in the greater plan, like with what's right here in front of me?
So we really went on a tangent from the failure part. So what would be the forgiveness of that? Is it just forgiving yourself? Like, do you feel like you already said it? Feel free to recap.
I didn't say it, but I felt like you actually answered it for me because I was going to say like the hardest part of that forgiveness, going back to your engagement story, was um, that Jess, an amazing human being who did so many good things in his life, continued to make really difficult choices. And he is no longer here on earth. I think he died of a broken heart. And the forgiveness for me, and it's still a practice, is the forgiving myself for the things I didn't do. Yes, I ended it well, and I feel grateful for that gift and strength from from God, from nature to help me learn to do that. But there were so many failures along the way, and there were several years that it was really, really hard. And I was blessed to have some good teachers and some good mentors and coaches, and the healing of the commitment of practicing of forgiveness, of self forgiveness, and knowing that I did the best I could with the tools I have. And even today, when I hear people say, "Oh, I need to be hard on myself," there's a difference between being disciplined and committed to something, but we can still be gentle, which is what the horses have taught me and what nature teaches us. It's gentle as it can be, unless there's a moment in which something intense is needed, like the lion you were talking about earlier with the antelope, right? So it's like that's really been the forgiveness that has, and so much of the work I do today, which I feel so sad that it came from something that was so hard and that had such a high cost for other people, including Jess. And I get, I think one of the other things, just to say one more thing about this, Barbara, then I'll pause, but is one of the other things I learned about nature is everything in nature is really clear on my part and not my part. So the tree doesn't try and do the grass's part or the sun's part, or, it doesn't try and do the dog's part. Einstein is like not trying to do any part except for Einstein's part, right? It's like everything in nature is like really clear. And it's not my part, your part. It's like my part is to know my needs. My part is to speak my truth. My part is to be as kind as I can. Your choices, all your things, they're not my part. Not my part at all. And I can be as loving and as present and generous as I can. And then I have to look, is this my part or not my part? And that's been a really great practice in my self forgiveness and to learning to move beyond that so that I could reimagine healthy partnerships in many forms.
I love that. Thank you. Okay. So we have failure, forgiveness, and then I feel like you could fill up 17 more podcasts with this last question. So feel free to pick your favorite one or you can do a couple. But what is a tool to bring people to freedom?
Mm, yes, I feel like this was a hard choice, this question.
Okay.
But I'm gonna stick with the one I had before I came in. I woke up with it this morning, and I'm gonna start with a little perspective on the tool before I get the tool. So I do think that perspective helps. It's one of the things that we look a lot to eagles or to the height of a tree to say, how do we start with the eagle's view and then come down to earth for making the practical tool? So for the eagle's view in this tool, I'm going to start with that eagle's perspective. I'm going to start with Einstein, our friend the cat. But I'm going to start with the Einstein that I'm guessing might be the namesake. Einstein, well, it's now a question whether he actually said this, but he said a lot of things similar to this, which he said, the first and most important question that every human must answer for themselves is the universe a friendly place? And the reality is, we are all answering that question every single minute and second of every single day. And how we answer that question either has us showed up, armored, as Brene Brown would say, or show up as thinking we need to contort to be pleasing or thinking there's scarcity. So, really, what are the things that help us at that eagle's view lens perspective start to say, how do I answer that question? And let me inquire and engage with that, because if I'm answering it that's a malevolent, I'm going to consume so much of my life force, not living my purpose, my values, my desires, my joys. I'm going to spend all of my energy protecting myself or fighting against or hoarding, because there's scarcity. And so I love that question because I think as I've started to wrestle with it, the more I choose deliberately that I want to choose the courage, right? Back to that idea of courage to choose a friendly world, even with all of the horrific things that you were talking about. I still believe, as I think it was Howard Thurman who said, the world bends towards the arc of the world bends towards what is good. Anyways, I'm messing that part up. But that idea of choosing that consciously. So the practice, what that does is that gives me access to wonder. And when I have access to wonder, generosity, gratitude, kindness just flows naturally. And so the practice that I love for this comes from every sentient being on our planet orients itself every day. The birds orient themselves towards dawn and they sing while it's still dark. Horses orient themselves, where am I? Who am I with? Where am I going? So sentient beings are always orienting, and we have so removed ourselves from the natural world that we forget to orient. So to me, the practice I love is getting up every morning, and as I get out of bed, as my feet start to hit the ground, I orient. And it can be in many ways. I can orient to who am I? Who am I today? How am I waking up? What's in my space? Which is another whole topic, Barbara, we could talk about forever that comes from the horses. But like just a few simple questions. Who am I? Where am I? How am I? What's in my heart to give today? Or what do I need? But this simple practice, a minute of orienting, can have us enter the first steps of our day as an intentional creation. Um, and I find that this practice helps me be aware of things that I need to tend to during the day or things I want to offer to the day. So that is a simple practice I love that I think gives a lot of access to wonder, which I think is a state of great appreciation for this world and for our faith and all the things you talk about.
Thank you so much. I wanted to show you a book that I wrote during COVID. It's called And Then, oh, let's see if I can. And Then One Day the World Coughed. I
Ah,
actually made all the illustrations because I was so
ah,
afraid of like meeting with somebody and then like getting sick, God forbid, and taking it home to my dad who had cancer at the time. But this is a picture of when we realized this, it's all about the blessings of COVID. And like this says, I don't know if you can see it, but I'm free to roam again. And how like all the birds, like there were, instances of like wild boars and lions and bear cubs like coming out into the streets like the I-95 and stuff. And I think that was like a tall tale sign that like not only do we have to go back into nature, but we also have to give nature a chance to rest and not have so much, carcinogens going through and forget about the fires that happened last year, but like, you know, it's just so easy. We're in such a vulnerable place, with the earth and being kind to it and whatever. You don't even have to believe in global warming just to know like don't throw a cigarette into the forest. It's like so rude to the animals. Forget the fact that it's disgusting and it's trash and it looks gross. Like you're smoking in their backyard. Like animals can't and don't smoke for a reason. God created them that way. Why are you making them smoke, right? Your quote about the world bending towards good, which I want to look up because I love quotes like that. Anne Frank wrote, I think, somewhere in her journal, and she was literally in hiding with her family during the Holocaust. I still believe, after even after everything that's happened, I'm going to botch the quote, but something like, I still believe that people are good at heart. Like that, if
yeah.
if someone who's surviving the Holocaust, until she did not survive the Holocaust, could still say that as she was being marched to her death, how all the more so shouldn't we be thinking that all the time? And the third thing I'll say about your beautiful tool is that when I was going through one of the hardest times of my life, this is before I went into that relationship that ended in a broken engagement. So 7, 8 years earlier, I was like turning 30. And I thought it was so scary that I was turning 30 and I wasn't married yet. Something viscerally in my body was like, this isn't okay. You have a timeline, you have goals, you're missing the timeline. Like, you're pretty, you're fun, you're a good person, you don't have any like disorders. Like, why is this person not showing up? I mean, maybe I had general anxiety disorder, as most Jews do, because it's like in our blood. We like ran out of Egypt, whatever. But it wasn't showing up so much. And I remember at 31, I had this like intense bout of anxiety. And there were moments definitely after that that there'd be a kindling effect where the anxiety would come and I would like really feel it and I'd have panic attacks. And so I went through a slew of therapists trying to find the right one. I was going to go on medication. Then I was like, I can't. I'm just not a medication kind of person. To this day, thank God, Leonora, like food is medicine for me. Not, I'm not saying it's wrong for everyone. It's just, I'm really not into big pharma and all that stuff. And I found this one therapist who taught me one tool that I will always remember. And it was really important. She wasn't that good at the other stuff, but this was really helpful. She said, when you wake up in the morning, if you're going to do your prayers, do them. Fine. Of course, I always did them because I find them so helpful. But she said, then maybe either before or after, just sit in your chair and look around and start naming things that you see. Like now, I don't think, I think I could count on one hand how many times I've prayed indoors since I was like a year after this. Um, because I always found God in nature. So I like have to do my prayers outside no matter how cold, no matter how hot. I'll bundle all the way up. I'll take all my clothes, like not all my clothes, but I make sure I'm outside, right? Like even in the heat here in Florida, I'm like outside every day and I do it. And I will every morning be like, Look how pretty this tree is. And look at those leaves. Oh, they were more orange yesterday. Now they're yellow." And only now that you're in this moment, when you said the birds orient themselves every day, I never heard that before. I'm so grateful I got that little piece of wisdom from you. It's like now I know what beginner's mind is because when you're actually in it and you take the moment every day to sit and look and sit and listen and sit and hear and sit and breathe and take it all in, you have a shot at having a great day because it started with that.
Yeah, you've oriented. I love that so much. I had a young man recently who told me he's going through a really hard time, and his version of orienting is I go out to the tree in my backyard, I lay on its roots, I remember how long they've been there and how strong they are. I look up at the trunk and remember I have a core. I look at the leaves and remember they keep stretching towards the sun even when it's hard. It's like we each get to orient in a way that works for us. And I love how you are really bringing it to life for people so beautifully. It's just an amazing gift to connect with you.
Oh my gosh, like 100%. I want to run a retreat with you. Let's
Yes.
go. Let's go
Let's
back to
go.
you.
For sure.
Yeah, someone actually, I led a workshop last night at my sister's, and like there were a bunch of women there, and I said, everybody, close your eyes and breathe in deep. And I have this one meditation where I say, go to the roots underneath your body and send love and light through the roots to somebody else on the other side of the world, even if they don't deserve it, and send it back. And this meditation came to me years ago, it just like in the middle of the night, and I've done it so many times, all ages, all kinds of people, and it always has a good ending. People like struggle and they'll come up to me after they didn't really deserve it, but I still sent it to them. And I'm like, okay, and how did it feel getting it back? Well, they couldn't send it back. I'm like, try it again. I'm like, just imagine it's their soul, not even their body or their mind or their ego sending it back, but some part of them that's godly. And she's like, fine. And I got a call from that person today, and she goes, I was forgiving the wrong person. And I said, who was it? She goes, I had to forgive myself. Because very rarely do we see ourselves on the other end of the world, sitting on those roots. But I think what you're saying so humbly and beautifully as you do, because you're such I mean, graceful. It's like I'm gonna look in my dictionary later, and I have a feeling I'm gonna see your picture under the word graceful. But you have so much grace and dignity in your truth, and it's so wonderful to hear your truth. And the way you said it, it's like anyone could hear this podcast, and there will be some that say, wow, she forgave that ex-husband. Well, okay, she forgave him. And I am taking away that you forgave you,
True.
which is really what it's all about. We can curse the things and the people that came to us that stole our money or made us fall or hurt us real bad or abused us, God forbid. And yet it's very hard to say it and even hear it sometimes, but you have to believe that it's all from the divine. Like whatever came to you, it's your soul I hate to say you needed it, but there was some sort of calling in it.
There was for me. So, yes, thank you for that beautiful reflection.
Oh my gosh, thank you. So, how do we get in touch with you? How can we do all the things so that we have more of Mary Kay in our life?
It's so generous. Well, what I would say is for people who would like to have practices that help them orient to wonder, even in a world that doesn't always seem safe for it, and how to build partnerships so we can live as our truth. I have a newsletter called Awaken to Wonder. It comes out on Sundays and it's very, very short, very little Sunday, so that we can start our week oriented from our truth rather than from what the manufactured world gives us of the Monday through Friday. And then in the middle of the week to remind us to ground into who we are. So super simple, very inspiring. For me, I needed it, which is why I give it to myself so I can wake up to wonder. And I love for people in the community to contribute to it, their own practices. So that would be one way. And then on my website is a way to reach out for retreats and whatever fun we create together. So
Okay, amazing. I'm so excited. And yeah, I mean, there's so much more to say, but I know your time is limited. So thank you so much for being here.
uh, thank you for all of who you be and what you do in the world. And I feel so blessed that I'm connected to you, that we're in the same herd.
I know, me too. I'm same. I mean, sometimes people say to me, even when I'm leading, and I dare put myself on anywhere near your level, but like I was co-running this group during Clubhouse. I don't know if you remember Clubhouse. It was an app during COVID and it was like just audio, but like Facebook, like a big party line. I don't know. And so I ran one for See One Beautiful Soul about forgiveness, and another friend of mine ran one, and it was all like about mental health. And we literally saved a couple of people. I mean, unless they were acting, they were really good actors from like suicide. It was like a suicide mission in a way. It was like so many people were so lonely and so separated from their families, and we would just talk them down from the ledge, so to speak, of anxiety and severe depression. And we didn't even know what we were doing. Like, I don't think there was one guy, Dr. Norman, who is a certified and licensed psychologist, and he'd always say, I am not, in any way giving you medical advice. However, and so we made like a podcast from it. It was really cool. But this is all to say that sometimes I would jump on that line and I was doing it for myself. I wasn't there to inspire others. I was there to be inspired. And so it's really cool when, some of your teachers become your friends because you get to, hear that, oh no, you could help reflect for them too. So thanks. Thanks for
Yeah,
being here.
yeah.
Okay.
We're all walking each other home, as they say, right?
I mean, yeah, or trotting each other. Okay.
Trotting. Yay! I love that we have the horses with us in the closing thoughts. So amazing being with you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes.
If you know somebody with a great story about forgiveness, failure, or freedom, please share them with us. If you learned something new or feel like something from this episode could inspire someone else, please share the episode on your Facebook page or Instagram and tag that person and tag us too. You can find all of our social medias, drop us a note, or join our newsletter at www.see1beautifulsoul.com. Please don't forget to subscribe and review us on iTunes, Spotify, or anywhere else you hear podcasts. May we all choose to look for the light in ourselves and each other in all ways, always.